Hey guys, welcome back to Read Instead. I'm Jake. Glad to have you here today. Today we're going to be talking about the grimdark fantasy trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, The First Law. Stick around. Okay, let's do it. First book in the First Law trilogy, The Blade Itself. Second book in the First Law trilogy, Before They Are Hanged. Third book in the First Law trilogy, Last Argument of Kings. Okay, so 2 out of the 3 of these books, similar to, I believe, the Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown, 2 out of the 3 of these books for me were 5-star reads. And also similar, I'm just recalling this as I'm making this video, the first 2 books in this series were the 5-star reads, similar to Red Rising Saga. I don't know what it is, maybe third books in trilogies, they just usually tend to get really sort of grandiose and big, and sometimes I think for me, just this is personal to me, that I really enjoy just sort of intimately getting to know characters and motivations and stuff like that, and seeing the story unfold. Maybe I like that and enjoy that a little more than, you know, the big sort of explosion at the end. I love this trilogy. It's filled with political intrigue. It's filled with there's sort of an overlying, as in a lot of fantasy, there's sort of an overlying wizardry backstory that kind of, there's an arc that sort of takes place throughout all 3 books. But I would say, more importantly, and the thing that makes the series great, and if anybody has read the series, is watching this video, I think would probably agree with me, is that the characters that Joe Abercrombie creates and writes, I mean, Joe Abercrombie is highly skilled in character development and giving a character a uniqueness and a voice that connects with the reader. One of the ways in which he does this, and you see this is sort of a something that writers do in novels. I don't know the correct terminology for it. I guess it would be called inward voice. Joe Abercrombie does this to perfection. And what he'll do is, in italics, he'll give you the inward voice of what the character is saying to his or herself inside their mind as they're doing something, as they're having a conversation with another character, they're in a dialogue with another character, and in between the sentences, there'll be an italic sentence of what the character is actually saying to themselves. And this sort of trademark, the thing that Joe Abercrombie uses, is it lets the reader into the mind of the character, and for me, it just gave me a way to really connect with these characters, because the characters are the best part for me in this trilogy. I just want to share a couple of them with you, or really mainly sort of the 4 main characters that are in this trilogy. Number 1, Inquisitor Glocta. That's his name, Inquisitor Glocta, at the in the first novel, The Blade Itself. As he gets to the 3rd novel, I'll just tell you, his name changes from Inquisitor to Superior Glocta. So you can tell that he sort of climbs the ladder a little bit, needless to say. He is a soldier, or sort of a famous war hero from the past, who was taken prisoner and tortured in an enemy camp, or over enemy lines for a number of years, and then he was finally released back to the Union, put back into Union hands. The Union is sort of just the government, and it's the government that sort of runs most of the world of Adua, and I guess it would sort of be thought of as maybe like the United States compared to the rest of our world. Sort of I think, not that they're morally, they always do the right thing or anything like that, but it's the place where it seems as though people prospered the most, and sort of the biggest sort of bustling area in this particular world, the Union. So Sandan Glokta is released back into the Union, and he sort of takes a place now as a cripple because he's been tortured for so long. He takes sort of a place in government as a worker, and you first see him as basically a torturer. He's like used as an intelligence person to sort of gain information within. He works for a politician, and the politician puts him to work in gaining information and sort of trying to seek out treason. And this guy is just so he is so conflicted on the inside because first of all, he just thinks everybody around him he just doesn't like anybody, and he's just so bitter from his past, from being captured and taken captive and being tortured. It's really made him bitter and cold inside, but at the same time he's highly intelligent, he's highly motivated, and he knows how to play on different people's emotions, and he knows how to play on their particular motivations, and he really is an expert at sort of climbing up the ladders of government, and he always knows how to play his cards right. And but the inner dialogue, that thing that I talked to you about within Sandan Glokta, that's his full name, Sandan Glokta, Inquisitor Glokta, that inner dialogue that you would read when reading these books is something that I still remember today. I read this a couple of years ago, anyway, a few years ago, and I can still remember that inward dialogue that Glokta was always having with himself. It just really stuck with me. It was very, very enjoyable and entertaining to read. Another main character is a barbarian soldier from the north, and the north is sort of the cold, dark, rugged place in this world that breeds those kind of men and women. His name is Logan Ninefingers, and he has a very strong and alive reputation as a great warrior, but he's sort of rubbed a lot of fellow warriors and kings and whatnot of certain areas of the land up north. He's sort of rubbed them the wrong way, and at the very beginning of the first book, he sort of goes on the run, and he was very enjoyable to read too. Next would be Jazal Dan Luther, and he is basically a selfish, spoiled, rich, aristocratic kid from the inward parts of the city of inside the Union, and he basically he wants to become the best fencing champion. Fencing is something like fencing duels is something that is a sport in this trilogy, and he wants to become the best. But he, by poor decision making, and he kind of sort of gets himself into trouble and gets caught up in wars, and gets himself into situations and places that he doesn't want to be. And he's probably the character in this series that sort of changes the most over time, and that's what I remember most about him. Jazal Dan Luther. And last but not least, Baez, the first of the Magi, first of a group of wizards. He's sort of a guy who always sort of stays calm within the political strife and sort of political storms that are taking place around him, battles and wars and whatnot. And he is the one that sort of maintains throughout the entire trilogy the overarching story of sort of like the religious backstory that takes place within this trilogy. But Baez also sort of inputs himself into politics. There are political factions and politicians who respect the counsel and the ideas of wizards and Baez himself, and then there are others who think it's all kind of hogwash and foolishness. And but Baez really has a great way of sort of seeing everybody's motivations and sort of seeing things unfold before they actually do. And he's a leader in many ways. And so I just want to say too, so this sort of falls into the category of grimdark fantasy. I believe I explained that to you guys in a past video. Grimdark fantasy, I would just say, is like fantasy rated R, right? I will say, however, there isn't a ton of fantasy elements in this series. And, you know, for me, that's just my personal opinion, thinking back on it now. There's the thing that I remember to this day is first of all the battles is, you know, war and battles is something that's very prevalent in all of these novels, especially the last one. There's a lot of sort of battlefield tactics and you know, strategic battle decisions that, you know, take place, stuff like that. And then politics, you know, politics and government and striving for power are the biggest sort of aspects of this trilogy. So, you know, there's not a ton of, you know, it's not like in every chapter there's some sort of wizardry or magic going on and stuff like that. But there are those elements for sure. But again, if you guys are interested in, when you read, if you really find yourself connecting with characters more than anything else, and you enjoy unique characters that have their own voice, and you can really start to share their mind as a reader, Joe Abercrombie, like I said before, is just he's one of the best at that, probably the best that I've ever read. So as always, if anything that I shared with you guys today sounds interesting or intriguing to you, I would encourage you to pick up the first book in this series. Just try the first book, and if it's not for you, maybe it's not for you. But the first book, The Blade itself, pick it up, give it a try, and I hope you like it. The First Law by Joe Abercrombie. Take care.